A very good day, everyone, tuning in from around the world. I'm Santanaya, the project officer for partnerships and events at the Global Schools Program. As everyone is gearing up to attend the Summit of the Future at the UN the next couple of days in conjunction with the International Conference of Sustainable Development 2024, Global Schools Program is back with another site virtual event this year. Welcome to our event. And this time around, our notion of conversation would be on transforming education and the Summit of the Future itself with an intergenerational dialogue. I hope I cannot pronounce it correct for global change. We have a concrete partnership for this event with the SDG4 Youth and Student Network, which is a platform for youth and students to take action for the SDG4 Education 2030. As much as many of you would have read the Back of the Future document, there were very little emphasis given on education and education for sustainable development. Therefore, the objective of this virtual event itself is actually firstly fostering dialogue. We would like to have a collective, transformative, and productive conversation between intergenerational panelists and students plus educators alongside all the attendees who are here today to co-create, reimagine, redefine the paradigms of education itself. We would love to encourage all the youth agencies out there to share their perspectives and provide recommendations to accelerate the implementation of the 2030 agenda, plus to strengthen and build momentum amongst young people and diverse participants who are here today in creating long-term partnerships and networks for the continuous improvement of education systems around the world. It is important for all of you to follow the events of the Summit of the Future itself, if you're physically there or you're tuning in virtually, and including the International Conference of Sustainable Development, plus other side events related to education, to see yourself how far the SDG4 has progressed and the needs to amplify the actions taken since 2022 at the Transforming Education Summit. Before we begin the heated conversation that we are about to have, let's start with a little opening remark from our own Global Schools Director, Amanda Abram. She is the Director of GSP and founded the Global Schools Teachers Advocates Program for teachers and educators to bring SDGs within schools, communities, curricula, and operations. Previously, Amanda has held positions with the Chilean Ministry of Education and worked on the U.S. Department of State's international exchange programs for leaders from Africa and Middle East. Apart from being one of the top 15 selected change makers as WISE Emerging Leader 2023, she's Fulbright Scholar, a NIE Environmental Education 30 under 30, and a Global Ambassador for Quality Education on behalf of the UN Foundation. Amanda herself is a published author of the UN a published author and holds a master's in international affairs from Columbia University and a master's in public administration from the London School of Economics. Let's hear from Amanda herself.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Santa. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I don't want to take too much time away from the panelists and the dialogue today, but just wanted to say a quick welcome to all of you that are here at the Global Schools event in contribution to the Summit of the Future. We're really excited to host all of these wonderful panelists and have this conversation contribute to the upcoming action days, as well as we head into the UNGA next week. Global Schools is a large community of practice of approximately 1,800 schools across 100 countries. We primarily focus on teacher training, on education for sustainable development. And this year, we're going to be launching quite a few new programs and initiatives. One of them called UN at Your Doorstep, which really focuses on creating dialogues between leaders and young people. And we're going to be announcing that this upcoming Friday at an event we're having in New York, and there will be a live stream. So we'll put the information in the chat to have you join us as well. So I really want you to hear from the panelists that we've gathered today to really spark these discussions and bring a lot of rich perspectives to these conversations. And once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Amanda. Moving forward, our keynote speaker is a prominent personnel at UNESCO and she's currently based in Paris. Miss Tamara Richardson is the Associate of UNESCO Chair in the Intercultural and Interreligious Relations Asia Pacific. She brings incredible expertise through her leadership of PACE 48, where she has worked across the Asia Pacific region on cultural and educational initiatives. She worked with global organizations, including the UN, UNESCO, the G20, and the Commonwealth. She is a passionate advocate for intercultural dialogue and global education. So let's hear from Ms. Tamara herself.
Thank you, Santha. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tamara, and just like a lot of young people, at some point, I have felt very frustrated by traditional education systems. I've often felt that they are slow moving at times, sometimes outdated, and that they weren't really catering to my needs as a learner in a more global and interconnected world. Young people today are an incredible asset and knowledge source for helping to co-design policies and programs that enable us to adapt education systems to not just be future-proof, but today-proof against some of our largest global challenges, from climate change, increasing geopolitical tensions, and the rise of things like populism, for example. So in 2016, in my university bedroom in Brisbane, Australia, I started a Facebook page to connect with some young friends from Asia and the Pacific that I had met, and to quite simply share videos amongst us about our cultural heritage. It was really interesting to me. I wanted to learn about different cultures, languages, the region, but I just didn't have access to this education or this knowledge. This desire to learn in a more global world stemmed from the fact that I come from a rural part of my country where language education, cultural education is relatively underexplored. It's difficult to access. And so this Facebook page quickly gained traction and grew into a multinational youth organization, PACE 48, that promotes access to cultural education across 48 Asia-Pacific countries. Within the first 3 months of quite literally starting a Facebook page, not thinking anything of it, we were able to engage young people who share these similar interests to learn more in 30 target countries and more than 10,000 young people. Utilizing these digital technologies to enhance access to not just education, but quality education as well, has never been more important or indeed possible for us. We began with young people quite literally videoing themselves on their phones to teach each other, and it evolved into an organization that places quality at the heart of facilitating this access to education. This experience has also enabled a significant group of young people from the Asia Pacific, representing diverse communities, countries, languages, cultures, backgrounds, to directly participate in policy design and reform, and to have that intergenerational discussion, which I'm sure will be had today. We've been able to participate in, for example, the Australian government's review of the Melbourne Declaration. We've been able to participate at the Commonwealth level, UN level, G20, the OECD, simply by starting a Facebook page. That is all it took to participate in these conversations. PACE 48 is an example of how informal education has a place in the education space in a fast-moving and highly interconnected world. It shows us that we are capable as young people of teaching and learning from each other in informal environments that suit us and our needs. It reminds us that something as simple as minute-long videos from Jakarta, Islamabad, Kuala Lumpur, Tokyo, about our favorite foods, our languages, really can work to reduce the biases that we hold towards each other, and we can replace those biases with informed knowledge. This knowledge leads us to being more well-rounded individuals who hold capacity to work together to begin addressing some of our most pressing needs in the world. Having now visited much of the Asia-Pacific region and spending time with thousands of young people from Lahore to New Delhi, Sydney to Tokyo, Pyongyang to Suva and beyond, what I've learned is that young people in the cultural education space, they want to engage across borders, but they also want to use these tools and use digital technologies to understand their own national context and the people who make up their countries, which is why the solutions that you design today should be made with the intention of adaptability and localization. PACE 48 has also taught us that there is still so much more to do in this space. Organizations like PACE 48, they have a role to play in not just bridging gaps in policy and working towards achieving existing policy objectives and targets, but imagining innovative solutions. In a perfect world, in my opinion, organizations like PACE 48 would not need to exist. My job would not exist. And of course, as a young person, I want to encourage fellow young people, do not wait. Nothing needs to be perfect. You just need to begin. We started with a Facebook page and it grew into something amazing, which is why I'm going to finish my very short speech by a call to action. We're currently designing a project to support the employment of migrants and refugees in the Asia Pacific while facilitating access to language and cultural education for youth living in rural and remote communities. So if any of the young people or experts today in this meeting have experience in this space, please feel free to reach out to me so we can connect and share that knowledge. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tamara, and providing a remarkable opportunity out there for our young leaders. All right, so let's get into a heated conversation today. So we are going to have 3 rounds of the session. So for the first round of the conversation would be with emphasis on key skills to ensure students are prepared for the future. We have 4 panelists with us today to talk about that. We are going to have 2 different sub-questions for this conversation. And so the first question would be answered by 2 panelists. So I would like to introduce our panelists first. First would be Dr. Margaret Sinclair from the United Kingdom. She was previously the head of education at the UNHCR. She is an educational planner who has worked on education emergency since 1987, even before I was even born. Initially for UNHCR's program for Afghan refugees in Pakistan. She headed the UNHCR's Refugee Education Unit in Geneva and served as a consultant on education emergencies with UNESCO. She's an advocate for education for learning to live together and for the related Sustainable Goal Target 4.7. Also a co-convener of Networking to Integrate SDG 4.7 and Social Emotional Learning into Education Materials, NISIM. So I would like to welcome Dr. Margaret. It is indeed an honor to have you here. And we have our second speaker who is going to share the space with Dr. Margaret. It will be Simon Wamo from Kenya, who is the founder and CEO of a nonprofit organization that makes timely interventions that guarantee access to quality education across Kenya and Africa through technical and infrastructural support, policy advocacies, economic empowerment, and community sensitization programs. He's a dedicated GSP advocate himself in support of the UNESCO's Global Action Plan for Education for Sustainable Development. He holds a master's degree in leadership for sustainability from Malmö University, Sweden, and is a member of the Swedish Institute of Global Professionals, which is a network of global leaders that contribute to the 2030 agenda. So welcome to Dr. Margaret and Simon. So my question for both of you would be, how can education system better equip students to address and adapt to the multifaceted crisis we have today? We would start with Dr. Margaret.
Okay, thank you very much. I think at the upper end of intergenerational, thank you so much for inviting me here. On the subject of skills, just want to start by saying that so much focus among policymakers now is on literacy and numeracy, and in country on preparing for high stakes exams on subjects. So we want to talk about 21st century crises things that we've seen in, for example, SDG 4.7, like climate change, lack of gender equity, ethnic prejudice, religious prejudice, unwillingness to negotiate an end to conflicts, poverty, inequality, and so on. And those things do not feature strongly in the national level discussion of education priorities. So what can we do about that? You all know that on a small scale, teachers and students can really fly with those topics, get engaged with the issues and what can be done about it, and build up a sense of agency. But the question is, what about education systems? So I just want to mention the area I'm working in, because time is very limited, the curriculum chain. How would these topics get into the curriculum chain, especially in centralized lower resource settings? The curriculum chain starts with policy and the curriculum framework, and it's easy to put these crises and current topics and social emotional learning and life skills into policy documents. But then the chain moves on to syllabi for subjects and classes. And then it moves on to writers who write the materials that are used for these classes. And then it moves on to teachers and students. And what you find is that teachers say, well, we don't know about these things. They're difficult, they're sensitive, and we don't have time because we have to complete the textbook in the course of the year. So the point that and when you get to the textbook writers, they don't know about these crises. You go to meetings, I participate in discussions where we talk all the time about these crises and these challenges and opportunities. But the people who write textbooks, they don't go to those meetings. Sometimes they're just school teachers who are taking on an extra responsibility, and they have homes to run and everything. This is a real example. So how can they be, worried about the things that worry us? So my point is that the curriculum chain is often very hidden. Somebody told me it's in a silo. It's what was the word they used? Insular. And what I'm asking is if youth groups and NGOs and innovative schools can talk to people in their country to prioritize to clarify the difficulty of moving forward from policies to practice, and that there are intermediary stages, and you have to put some resources into those intermediary stages. I'll give you just one example, time is so short. Photosynthesis. So the writer could add the story of a young forest ranger or of youth planting mangroves. Photosynthesis is critical to climate change, but a science textbook writer may not have good local examples to hand and may copy previous books and just reproduce dry theories to learn by heart, which will not inspire anyone. So this is the challenge.
Very interesting, Doctor. Thanks, Dr. Margaret. Moving on to Simon, what is your point of view on that? You're on mute, Simon. Sorry about that.
Sorry, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak here. It is a subject that is close to my heart. I am in the education space, and speaking after Dr. Margaret has spoken is quite difficult, but it's a topic that inspires me a lot, because the youth, as we all know, are not only the future as they are known to be in several quarters, but they are actually the present as well. And focusing on them gives us the best chance to ensure that the world is more responsive, sustainable, and we live in a peaceful state. So coming to the education systems and the skills they need to inculcate in the youth to deal with the 21st century crisis that Dr. Margaret has effectively described, I think gone are the days when the education systems could only focus on the acquisition of knowledge and cognitive skills, because it doesn't make any sense for a youth or a learner for that matter to be so competent or effective in acquiring knowledge and cognitive skills without actually having the capacity to acquire other skills that complement the cognitive skills. For example, I would mention skills like green skills. The world is experiencing a dramatic shift in several respects. So the education systems must ensure that within them, and we all agree that the curriculum is very important. And what the Global Schools program is doing is great, ensuring that it improves the capacity of the educators like us to include these important skills in the curriculum. And we need, as players in this space, to ensure that we create the necessary agency, advocacy, to ensure that each government, which is a major player in curriculum development, it includes all these important skills, apart from focusing on cognitive skills. For example, as I just said, the green transition is an important element. And for the job market, these skills transcend any form of work, any form of culture, because you cannot be, for example, an accountant and you do not know how to relate with others. You need to ensure that every aspect of your job revolves around how you make your organization profitable, yes, how to report the financial statements, but at the same time, how to relate with others and how to ensure that the organization is contributing towards creating the world a better place. It's not just about profit, but it's also about people and the planet. So green skills for me is a very important aspect that the education systems must ensure that they are included within the curriculum. And also socio-emotional skills, like Dr. Margaret has well explained, because these are skills that ensure that a person, a youth in this matter, relates with others in the best way possible. Empathy, and also global citizenship values, because the world is increasingly interconnected. And when we appreciate the globalized nature of our world today, we will then ensure that these skills are well inculcated in in the youth. And what the best platform to do that is to ensure that these skills are within the curriculum, so that the implementers, and the challenge that Dr. Sinclair has presented to us is, what about the people who are going to write these texts? What about the people who are going to implement them in the classrooms? Are they ready for it? Are they well prepared for it? And are they actually knowledgeable about these skills? So I will end by saying that it is important, first of all, to mention three things: foundational skills, which actually builds the foundations of learning; then cognitive skills, green skills, and most importantly as well, the values for sustainability, because you cannot claim to define quality education without invoking the aspects of relevance, purpose, and the values of sustainability. So yes, it is a challenge to us as educators to ensure that we create the required agency in ensuring that we advocate for the education systems to radically shift from focusing on only cognitive skills, but also to holistically ensure that all these other skills that complement the acquisition of knowledge are well inculcated in our youth, so that they can create a more sustainable future and a peaceful one. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Simon. You brought up a very good point, values of sustainability, because I myself an educator, and it is a tough time for me to actually teach around different topics without knowing what are the SDGs related to each topic. So that is very interesting. So continuing on the same subtopic of equipping students with different set of skills, Our question number 2 would be answered by 2 more other panelists. So we have Arlinda Ramkaj from Switzerland. She represents the UNESCO SDG 4 Youth and Students Network in Switzerland, the charity Their World for Early Childhood Education, and works as an English and psychology teacher in middle and high school. Arlinda holds a master's in English and psychology, along with a master's of advanced studies in education and pedagogy and vocational training. She is a researcher in the field of lifelong education and a fervent advocate for quality education and rights to education. And our second panelist for this is Hayat Della Kahal from Algeria. She is a foreign language teachers and a global schools program mentor for 4 teachers from diverse countries across North Africa. She's also part of the UNESCO SDG 4 Youth and Students Network as well. She trains and assists fellow teachers in integrating sustainable development goals into the curriculum to make schools more sustainable. She won the 2022 Best Media Award for raising awareness about climate consequences among young Africans. Hayat is a Common Futures Conversations member at the Chatham House and also a UPG Sustainability Champion. Welcome aboard, both of you. So my question for both of you, and let's start with Arlinda. We move from students and now equipping them with the proper education system, the skills the teachers need, what kind of skills. How can we amplify the voices of young people in discussion about educational reform and sustainable development?
Thank you so much for this presentation, also for including us as SDG 4 Youth and Students Network members here. And we are also very glad in partnering this event today. So this question is difficult to answer because there are also a lot of ways, but I think that those ways encounter a lot of barriers at the same time. One way that is the first one that I can think of, that is one that is a bit more institutionalized, is in having the meaningful participation of youth in decision making and educational systems in general. And one framework that helps with this participation can be the Youth Declaration on Transforming Education that UNESCO and the SDG 4 network partnered in building. And so it concisely and comprehensively gathers the call of young people and how to transform education. I'm sorry, there's just something on my screen here. Okay, that is gone. And so there is this first framework, I'd say, that is very institutionalized, and that is one of the first entries into how to amplify the voices of young people in discussions about education reforms. Another way is just to listen. I think that I'm also myself as an educator and as a teacher, I have to listen to what my students not only want, but what is of their interest, and also what do they need in order to adapt to the upcoming job market that they will have to apply for, to the skills that are required nowadays in order to prosper in a way. And I think everything starts there. At our level as educators, it starts with listening to young people, but also at the higher levels, such as governments that were mentioned by Simon before. I think it's important to just have an open mind to having, for example, student boards or students' committees, associations, all those different structures that can really gather the voice of young people and that can make their message resonate throughout these governmental structures, and so that they have a real impact on education afterwards. So I think it starts there. For example, to take an example here in Switzerland, for example, we have student boards and we also have a national student committee, and they regularly meet with our representatives at the governmental level in order to speak up about their concerns, about all those different topics that are very important and meaningful to have a discussion for nowadays, such as education for refugees, for example, because we are affected, and it is a real problem here in Switzerland as well as it is in so many other countries. And how to include sustainable development more, those questions about gender, about inclusive schools, and so on and so on. And all those concerns have a place and have a seat, let's say, at a national level, and then all those concerns are relayed to a more regional level so that they still have an echo. And I think that these type of structures that start with listening to young people are very, very important. But I'll let my colleagues speak so that maybe I can rebound afterwards.
Sure, over to you, Hayat.
Thank you so much. I think Linda has covered many points I wanted to go through, but I will try to fulfill what she said. So I'd like to emphasize the point of political willingness and the support of policymakers. And it's been in place since the UN Convention on Rights of the Children and Youth. So the UN Convention has granted the rights for youth to speak, to share their opinions in matters that impact their lives in Article 12, Article 13, freedom of assembly with no intervention, and also the freedom of thought and consciousness, so Article 14. Besides the political willingness, I would like to also talk about the importance of reflecting the experiences of young people, the importance of bringing their identities into the scene, because if we want to really engage people, we need at least to put them into discussion. We need to hear them, not talk about them. So reflecting on this, one of the ways I would like to suggest is encouraging intergenerational dialogue hubs like this one, bringing people from different generations, different concerns, different political eras together to talk and share their concerns and try to find a common ground for everyone. And also at the classroom level, it's much more about participatory teaching methods to encourage that praxis of learning to action. So and also collaboration between different stakeholders at the national, international level, and also funding the youth movements. So there is many youth movements everywhere in the world, but the funding issue is quite critical. Just to conclude my my part, I would like to add two final things. Young people need a meaningful participation in decision-making systems and programs. And also the Youth Declaration on Transformative Education has concisely talked about young people and how they need to be, how their voice needs to be strengthened throughout education. And also, like, just as a short note from the UNESCO SDG for Youth and Student Network, this week we're hosting an event on youth, like ahead of the Summit of the Future, to advocate for the greater inclusion of youth in education and in governmental discussion. And I'll be sharing that in the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Linda. Yeah. Okay. And so we will quickly continue to the second round. We were speaking on innovative pedagogical approaches to effectively foster education for sustainable development skills. We will still have our 4 panelists, Dr. Margaret, Ms. Linda, and we'll have 2 more new panelists, Ms. Maria and Ms. Marcel. So Ms. Maria Jennifer Plamares from the Philippines. She's a dedicated educator who's making a significant impact in Libya and our first advocate and mentor for the Global Schools program in Libya itself. With a decade of experience in North Africa, she has pioneered the implementation of ACES International Schools Assessment at the first Philippine International School, elevating education standards to an international level, and excels as a social studies and English language teacher. She mentors young talents through the Mastercard Foundation Associate Program. She has her own YouTube channel, Study Time with Miss M, providing valuable learning resources to students worldwide. So do check her out. Welcome, Miss Maria. And Miss Masa Bokhari from Sierra Leone. Masa is a feminist writer and education champion. Her journey started with her own personal experiences of sexism, and which kicked off her writing and advocacy journey to advance the rights of girls and women. Currently, she amplifies this work through her role as a team coordinator of Purposeful, a feminist movement building hub rooted in Africa. Her writing work has been published in Alliance magazine, African Feminism, where she explores themes of feminism, youth development, and social justice. As a co-founder of Easy Learning Services, the social enterprise provides quality education and reduce unemployment. She is also a GPE youth leader and an active Rotaract, demonstrating her commitment to community service. And I have an amazing question. We could start with Maria first in this part. What innovative pedagogical approaches or classroom activities that you have found to be the most effective one in fostering skills to a rapidly changing world?
Thank you, Miss Santa. Am I audible? It's all good. Am I audible?
Yes, you are
Miss
audible.
Santa?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. I'm Miss Maria. But in the classroom, they call me Miss MJ because MJ means cool. Like MJ can be Michael Jackson or Michael Jordan. I have to be updated all the time. So, I mean, in our rapidly changing world, the key to effective education lies in the readiness of all the stakeholders to embrace innovative approaches. And just imagine a classroom where every student not only learns, but thrives, where their basic needs are met and their potential is fully realized. And this is the essence of Bloom before Maslow. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Bloom's taxonomy are not just theories, they are the foundation of a holistic educational approach. Because Maslow teaches us that students must feel safe, valued, and emotionally secure before they can engage in a higher order thinking. And Bloom, on the other hand, guides us in developing cognitive skills from basic knowledge to critical analysis and creativity. So there's an interrelation between Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Bloom's taxonomy, because there's a foundation of learning. So if a hungry or unsafe student cannot focus on learning tasks that require analysis or creativity. And of course, in today's fast-paced world, students need both cognitive skills and emotional resilience. I'm talking about resilience here because addressing Maslow's needs ensures students are emotionally prepared to tackle complex problems, while Bloom's taxonomy equips with the necessary cognitive tools. So we have, traditional approach and non-traditional approach. Under the traditional approach, we always use lecture-based learning, some discussion and debates, case studies, laboratory experiments. And in some countries, they're using it. Also in Libya, they always use the traditional approaches. But when I came here, I need to have, and the students need to have, to experience non-traditional innovative approaches. So for example, flipped classroom, the PBL, the project-based learning. The students can work on projects and then it fosters collaboration. Right now we do have gamification, incorporating game elements to increase engagement. We do have also blended learning, using the online digital media, because our students are Gen Zs, and most of them are, most of us are like millennials. So we have to know these digital media tools. We do have also collaborative learning. We do have also design thinking, especially the design thinking if you're going to have ESD lessons, because Design thinking encourages creative problem solving and innovation through processes. And these approaches are effective because of the adaptability, engagement, skills development. Remember that experiential learning fosters the 21st century skills and, of course, real world application. So approaches like case studies and design thinking help students apply their knowledge to real world. So, embracing both traditional and innovative pedagogical approaches, we can create an educational environment that not only meets the cognitive needs, because some schools, like, we're always focusing on standardized exams, and we always in a hurry to finish the whole book. But how about let's support their emotional and social development? So this holistic approach is very essential for preparing the students to thrive in a rapidly changing world. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. How about you, Masa?
Yes, thank you, Maria, and thank you, Santa. I think Maria has said it so well that I'm struggling to find what I had to say because I had the same things in mind. And for someone that came to school at a time when my country was just coming from an 11-year civil war, I have seen at firsthand how powerful education, when it's done right, could be. And one of the ways that could be was what Maria was talking about, making education away from the traditional way to a more human-centric way. And one way that could be, like Maria was saying, is through art. A lot of times, especially in 2024, we have made so much focus on technology and seeing how it could be used to change the world as we know it, and that is a fine way. But one of the ways that education has always been powerful is through art. And how we can know that is if we go back to when we all started schooling in primary schools, when we used to have music, we used to have art and craft. I don't know if this is the same for everybody, but this was what was happening in my country. We had like music, dancing. This made like education fun, and it's kind of built what Maria was talking about: resilience, creativity, and that approach. If we can build on that and take it to not just early education, like in primary school, but also to take it to senior secondary schools as well as tertiary educations, to move away from that idea of notes, lectures, cramming, which in my country and in most other parts of the world, as a keynote speaker was saying, makes learning so boring. And it doesn't change the world, but rather ensures that we all adapt to the world as it is. And the world that we have right now isn't the very best one. Yes, so that's one thing. And then another thing that I could say is that we have to invest in education. All of the things that Maria was talking about, these are things that we need to finance as individuals, as organizations, and as stuff. And also to remove education from the traditional sense in just limiting it from the classroom to removing it totally, or not totally, but to remove it to a large extent from the classroom. For example, in the organization that I work, Purposeful, we have a political education that we do in girls' circles. In this political education, we teach girls, young girls, feminism, life skills, but we also teach them with music, with dancing. And over 1,500 girls in each sessions, they all appear, they all come back to this learning session. It just means that we have to move beyond the box that we have put education into 9 to 5, 9 to 2, 9 to 4, and create new beings. And this could be in school, yes, in compounds, but it could also be online. It could also be at homes. We could imagine more how education could be. Yeah.
Thank you, Maria and Masa. So moving on to the second sub-question for this round, which would be discussed by Dr. Margaret and Ms. Linda. How can international collaboration be fostered to ensure that educational innovations and best practices are shared and adopted across different regions? Dr. Margaret, you're on mute.
Thank you.
There you are.
Yeah, there seems to be so much going on in terms of discussions and declarations on all these issues. Let's think of SDG 4.7, which all the UN members endorsed in 2015, and how many people that we meet outside our small circle know what this SDG 4.7 is. I'll give you another example of activity that for 2 years UNESCO consulted with people like yourselves and so on to revise their recommendation on education for peace that came from 1974. And last November, UNESCO member states, 194 states, voted to adopt a recommendation, which is stronger than a declaration, on education for peace, human rights, and sustainable development. And I've been talking to a few people lately because one of the things in that declaration is education for conflict resolution competence. And I talked to 1 or 2 peace educators, and one told me from Colombia, where this is a very active subject. He said, I know about it because I was consulted, but all the people I work with will not know about this recommendation. And we wrote to the lady in the Philippines, who's that older lady, very upper intergenerational, who has brought peace education in the Philippines through many years to be a legal requirement, actually, in principle. And she said, sorry, I haven't heard about this declaration. So what happens is that government officials, maybe from the Ministry of Education or a delegation to UNESCO or something, sign these declarations, but nothing much happens. So that's one of the challenges. The Ministry of Education staff are, so busy just trying to get education to happen, of the students, the teachers, the schools, the materials. They don't participate in these discussions. And so they don't ask donors to help them, improve their textbooks to integrate these things, for example, or their teacher training to integrate these things, or for that matter, their exams. So, for example, the Global Partnership for Education looked at 21st century skills in their national plans submitted to them, and they found that 21st century skills were sort of mentioned in the introduction, but they were almost totally absent from the actual requests for support. So there is a message not getting through there, and that's what I want us to take away from my contribution today, that youth advocates, NGOs, all these people at country level, if you can kind of get the ear of some champions in the ministry, in different places, to include this in their national budgeting for education or in their donor requests for education, because it's not happening. And without that little bit of extra support and extra time to say that it's important, we will continue to say that these things are important and happening, but it won't actually reach the classroom.
Very interesting point. Very alarming as well. How about you, Ms. Arlinda?
Thank you so much. And it's hard to rebound on what Ms. Sinclair has just said, because she has so much expertise in this field as well. But I would completely comply with this. What we see is that oftentimes it is a top-down approach, and the message gets lost in between, and there's no meeting halfway between the educators, the school itself, even the system of schooling at the local level, and then what comes above, the government or the state or whatever other structure there is right above. I think it all starts with a strong political will and including education in constitutions as well. As long as education is not recognized as a right of everyone to education, to lifelong learning as well, I think that we cannot really move forward. And let's say that all the initiatives won't have as much impact. So starting with the recognition of the access of education in constitutions and then adding, for example, education to sustainable development will really make things move forward. And then thanks to this, and hopefully there will be this will ignite some sort of fire to strategize or to implement a strategy that is specific to the nation itself. We can sign as many recommendations, declarations as we want at the global level. If we don't try and take what makes sense for us from them and implementing them at our national level, then there is no use in signing them either. So we really have to take what makes sense from them to our national level. If we speak, for example, just about sustainable development or sustainability, we won't integrate it the same into the classroom or even in our strategies locally. If we are a small island somewhere, or another big country that is not surrounded by water, for example, you will take those concerns differently. And I think that this cultural awareness as well has to play a part in how we implement some sort of education curricula, and yes, and then how we transform that into different pedagogical strategies as well in the classroom. But that really starts with working together and prioritizing what makes sense and the background we come from.
Very interesting. All right. As much as this conversation is heated, I want to bring back all the panelists to one floor again. So moving forward from round 1 to round 2 to round 3, the next dialogue would be on the Summit of the Future itself. As for your information, if you read the Pact of the Future document, which went through series of consultations with different stakeholders from last year to date, we have realized that education was not given much emphasis, even though multiple different organizations have clearly declared the agency to transform education around the world. As for the document itself, the focus were more on glaring issues like international peace and security, science and technology and innovation, and the youth and the future generation, also transforming global governance. So with 1 or 2 minutes with all of you here, the panelists, speaking on this demand on education, and my question, we could start with Dr. Margaret herself. What are your expectations for the UN Summit for the Future and action-oriented Pact for the Future with the chapters specifically on sustainable development and youth?
So given what I've just said, my expectations were not great. And when I tried to read the Pact for the Future, I found that it was so long, it was totally unreadable. So the nature of these international documents is that they kind of give permission for champions to champion something. And so it's as useful as you make it. And so even if it doesn't say much about our topics, there's enough there in vague words that you can cite it, the summit as justifying everything we've talked about today. But to make something happen, I'm thinking here especially of the Global South, which I've worked on more. We need a new paradigm, and we need to bring the idealists on the soft side of education and curriculum closer to donors and to finance ministries and education budgets. And while you have a situation where the Ministry of Education is in the control of certain civil servants who want to get more schools in a particular district, and they veto anything on curriculum, we're in a bad place. What we need is for youth and NGOs and so on, ultimately at national level, but also at international level, to create this discourse that resources are needed for this important thing and impetus is needed, and we have to support champions and use them, champions in our country, and use them, and that way we can adjust the curriculum chain and improve things. That's I just want also noted that beside governments, there are cities and other groups with resources. I just read a paper about how certain cities have really taken control of one of these topics, whether it's sustainability in some countries or peace in some countries, and done their own thing within a broad national policy. Because they have their own budget and therefore you can champion within a city, let's experiment, let's do this thing. And that can perhaps feed into the broader, national situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Margaret. How about you, Linda? I'll quickly go to you.
I comply as well with this perspective. I was really hoping to see more in the Pact for the Future, but also the Declaration for Future Generations. I think speaking about the future of education, of our children, of the future skills that we need to have as well, a lot more could have been done. I think from the youth community, and yeah, I'm not speaking for the whole entire community, but let's say for my closer groups. We were really expecting for a bit for more ambitious texts, more creative, maybe also a bit more innovative, and taking a bit more risks as what is stated there. Now I just hope that it's not empty words and false promises, but that we can really move forward with implementation. It's never too early to speak about how to implement those different recommendations and then how to transform them into policies that will make sense at the national level. So I really hope that on this level more will be done as well. As regards to, for example, girls' education or education of displaced communities as well, I think that way more could have been said, but it's always difficult with these papers to have everyone's consensus. So let's say I'm very mitigated about the pact itself, but I have hope that a community and us here will do our best to implement what is said there. And I think that youth is more than ever willing to contribute to it as well. And we are just waiting in some cases to be at the table and contribute to these discussions. So I have great hope that the summit will bring a fresh perspective, let's say, and that it will be a synonym of more youth inclusion and greater implementation. But let's not lie that it's a bit mitigating. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Alinda. I was actually looking more for, more action-oriented document. We are still lacking on that. How about you, Hayat? And then we'll move on to Ms. Maria.
Thank you so much. So I think that the Summit of the Future is much focused on sustainability and financing sustainability development, peace, and advanced technologies, like the risks that could, for instance, artificial intelligence and other advanced technologies they could have on terrorist groups and all, and also engaging youth. So, but there is no kind of explicit discussion about education for sustainability or education for sustainable development. So I hope this, at least this conference, will raise awareness about the need for ESD to be in the Summit of the Future and other intergovernmental pacts. And I mean, it's not impossible because a few years ago, a Conference of Parties was not including education, but after like I suppose 2 or 3 years ago, they start having pavilions for education. So teachers were going to talk about greening education, about sustainability education. So it is completely feasible if we focus on the synergies to make it happen. If we focus our ideas, if we bring our students, the teachers, the leadership in schools and in universities, it is possible. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes, Miss Maria, over to you.
I believe that networking, like we want more, like we have to put into actions, not only, simple awareness. And by the way, advanced World Teachers Day to everybody. And I believe that networking is very essential, and from my experience, the power of the internet has connected me with the Global School Program, the Institute of Humane Education, how to become a solutionary in other incredible organizations. And, for the youth, sometimes like we feel demotivated. Sometimes we feel motivated, but you have the power, harness the power of social media to spread everything, and in this technological world, you have the power and creativity to engage with different people online and use it properly to promote sustainability and other things. So in this world, technological world, we can use it. Social media is very essential now to air everything. That's it.
Interesting. Let's move to Simon and then Masa. And members who are participating today, you can ask questions as well to our panelists. So we have like 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A. So feel free to type out your questions. Over to you, Simon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have 2 things to say about my expectation for the Summit of the Future. One is I hope and I expect that this summit considers education as a very instrumental component in ensuring that there is sustainable development. I actually believe that quality education as an SDG is actually the circle around which the wheels of sustainable development actually rotate. And that being the case, I believe and expect that the people who are charged with the responsibility of ensuring that this summit succeeds and it's not just empty talk and promises, they consider that. Secondly, about the youth and the education systems, it is expected that the youth population will grow by more than 78 million between now and 2030. And that being the case, that this demographic trend actually places a lot of pressure to education and the training institutions. And the governments who are also part of the Summit of the Future should also ensure that they structure their own education systems to realize that fact, so that they actually cascade that information to the respective governments. And it's actually expected that of this 78 million, the low-income countries will actually contribute to nearly half of it. So as they deliberate, because it will involve participants from different countries, from different regions, and that fact that low-income countries are going to contribute to this explosion of population, especially in the youth demographic, they are going to contribute nearly as half of that. That is something that should be taken into consideration, and any policy declarations and any changes to be made to ensure that this is successful should take that into consideration. Thank you so much.
Over to you, Masa.
Yes, thank you, Santa. For me, I think one of the things that I'm looking forward to is we prioritize education for the future, education, especially for young girls and especially those living in conflict areas as at now. We need to prioritize the education as well as everybody that is there. Also to center indigenous knowledges and not just one strict way of education, but to make sure that individuals from different parts of the world, what they know to be valued as education as well, and not. Yeah. And also key is to invest in education to ensure that in every country that there's minimum, maximum investment in education. Organizations like GPE, we are a global youth leader, and also different organizations working to get children and young people in school, that they have the required resources that is needed to get their jobs done. And finally, to make education a human right for everybody, that individuals, government, stakeholders, everybody understands that education should be accessible to everybody in the world right now. Yeah.
Oh, very interesting conversation. So we'll quickly move to the question and answers session. And I have one question here. Maybe we could start with Masa. And this question is actually specifically addressed to teachers here. Masa, Simon, Maria. How can stakeholders work together to achieve the sustainable development goals? What specifically can teachers do? It's either Masa or Simon can start first.
Okay, fine. That's a great question. Teachers are one of the main agents of education transformation, and the best way, the easiest way, the most practical way that teachers can actually ensure that there is a sustainable development incorporated in their daily lives is, first of all, to be very innovative, to ensure that the sustainable development ideals are not only included within their curriculum, but they are actually practiced both in class and both from outside, ensuring that there is innovation and every aspect, whichever subject they are handling, there is an aspect in which they can actually include all the SDGs. If you are teaching about SDG number 1, no poverty, even if the subject in question is mathematics or arithmetic, there is a way in which you can actually create that scenario where you teach that concept with an element of invoking how we can use that to eliminate poverty. So creativity, innovativeness among the teachers is very important in ensuring that these concepts, these sustainability concepts, are inculcated in students, both in class and outside classroom, I would say so.
How about you, Masa?
Yes, I think what Simon said is so valuable, but also we also have to recognize that for teachers to get to where they are and to give their very best, we also have to invest in them and support what they are doing. So the question had a bit of stakeholders, so this to say like community organization and government also is to prioritize teachers. For example, in my country, teachers always go sometimes 1 or 2 months without getting their salaries. Some of them have been working for a very long time without having any promotions. And there's this general idea that when you're a teacher, it's like you're volunteering, and that should not be the case. For teachers to also have the platform to learn the innovative things that they should give back to the kids should be made a priority. And for teachers themselves, like Simon was saying, they always have to ensure that learning is fun, not just for the people that they are teaching, but they themselves, to ensure that there is maximum creativity in the classroom. And this idea of just notes should be something that could be there, but also that the fun in education also remains there at all time. Yeah.
Interesting. Any last word from Maria on that?
Yes, Miss Masha is here. And also, teaching is really difficult. Based on my experience here in Libya, this is way like backward approach. And the power of networking is the power of networking has given me a big opportunity to find educators in different parts of the world to share their experiences, and from them through the Global Schools program and through the educators, we share our lesson plans, we share our ESD lesson plans, and we share our websites. We are gathering in different organizations. So this is a great opportunity now to add our LinkedIn here and to network, because we do have like lesson plans, and of course ESD in the classroom. First you start with the local problem or simply like a school problem, and then you use the critical thinking skills activities to support to answer or to solve those local problems.
Okay, thank you, Maria, on that. So I will quickly turn over to Linda, Hayat, and Masa. As you are part of this SDG for Youth Network, how can educators get involved in UNESCO and GPE initiatives? We educators out there feel like we're a little separated, so we want to get involved. How can we be part of that? Hayat or Linda, any of you?
I think I will go. Thank you so much for the question. So for the UNESCO SDG for Youth and Student Network, we actually focus on youth because youth have been disadvantaged for so long in discussions in political engagement. But we also focus on students, like student youth. So and we regularly have campaigns. We regularly post things about our activities in the Teachers International Day, in Earth Day. So we are quite active online, and like by simple tweet you can be seen. So it's not that much far. Yeah, thank you so much. I hope I answered it, because like I suppose that every organization, they have a special agenda, and at least for us in the network, we focus so much about youth and the students, and we try to empower them. We try to improve sustainability education through emancipatory learning, and like to engage people into that praxis. Yeah, thank you. Maybe Arlinda can add to this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go on.
Yes. I was. Oh, is it me you gave the mic to? Sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
Masa or Linda, both of you.
Yes, so I was going to say at GPE, we have been working with government as well as education activists and educators, teachers themselves, to see where their gaps is and invest in education. And one of the things we do at GPE is to raise our hands for education, as well as to create an advocacy that ensures that education is human rights and teachers are supported in the way. So one of the ways you could get anybody could get involved in GP's activities is to follow us on social media, but also to invest. So if you don't know country, also you could invest in education while also looking at our future plans that is on the GP website. So I'm going to link that in the chat for anybody that wants to know more about how to get involved with GP. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Adelinda, you want to add anything?
I think pretty much everything was said, but it's true that sometimes it's difficult to access those platforms, UNESCO or GPE as well, and directly as educators. But there are different ways to get engaged. If not via UNESCO and GPE, there are other structures such as the Global Schools program. I'm making a big shout out here to the program, but I think it's important to be reminded of it. And then there are also platforms such as the world's biggest lesson, if not mistaken, where you have plenty of resources for educators, teachers, even students who want to know more, for example, about sustainable development or global citizenship. Or education for peace, and so on. And I think these different platforms are so important because they democratize all the knowledge that we have at the pedagogical level, so for teachers, but also on these different topics. And a way to engage is to go and read those documents as well and maybe apply them to your own teachings. But yeah, so there are different ways of getting engaged, and locally as well. It's important to get locally vocal in a way, and to be able to build maybe a small movement of teachers in your own school, or a small movement of students wanting to work together for a specific topic, or advocating for better educational rights. So I think it's important not only to think at the global level what we can do, though it is very important, but also to bear in mind that you can also advocate, you can also act at your local level.
Thank you so much, Linda. So unfortunately, we are running out of time because many of us are actually going off for different virtual events and side events currently. I can't accept any more questions. I'm so sorry. So I'll do some key takeaways here. So Dr. Margaret was mentioning that, we could not only urge the Ministry of Education not to simply sign recommendations, but being fully involved in it, and to improve education resources, to have more action oriented, and higher than Linda and the members of SDG4 network has told us that they want to see more of different type of that youth is given the seat at the table to make decisions even in a better way. And our teachers here have shared with us different skills that they have been teaching ways they have been using in their classrooms, and needed skills for the future learners. With that, we all need the strong voices to move forward. I know it's not easy for our educators out there to champion ESG in our schools. Even myself, I've been doing it since 2016, and I'm still having tough challenges for the past 8 years trying to do it. So we really hope you can reach us out to us through all our social media platforms. We would like to also invite you for our event on Friday for the Pre-Summit of the Future, happening at 11:15 ATM via live stream. Amanda has put the info in the chat there. I would like to thank our keynote speaker who have left. Amazing panelists here today. I learned a lot myself. Thank you so much for being here from different time zones from around the world. I would like to thank Global Schools Program, the team, SDG4 Youth and Students Network, GPE organization, for being with us today and helping this conversation to take forward. Thank you so much for the co-host for our dialogue today, and thank you to the audience for your time. I know all of you are from different time zones. And we hope to see you all in our next event, and do enjoy the rest of the summit and action days plus the UN General Assembly for the next couple of days. Thank you so much for supporting us, and have a great day to all of you.